Three-star tight end Sam Vyhlidal is coming to Washington.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into a special bonus edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'm coming at you on this Tuesday afternoon because Washington just earned its first commitment of what could end up being several on this Tuesday from three-star tight end Sam Vyhlidal, product of Mountainside High School down in Oregon. And this is a guy I'm really intrigued with. I look at a guy like Sam and I think, Washington got on him pretty late in the process. You didn't see the offer roll in till really late in the recruiting process, like early May. And it's nice to see Washington come around on him really quickly, a lot like they did last year with three-star tight end Austin Simmons, another product of Oregon. And Jordan Paopao has had a lot of success down in that state recently. And I'm really intrigued with what a guy like Sam brings to the table. Because you turn on his film, and it's something where I feel like I talk about this every time I end up mentioning him, because it's something that's very important in my eyes when you talk about a tight end who just lines up all over the formation. You look at some of his high school film, and it's not just playing tight end. It's playing split out wide receiver. There are some plays where he's lined up as the Wildcat quarterback. And this is something where I think that's really exciting because he fills that H-back sort of move tight end role that you're going to see a lot of in this offense, a lot like what Decker DeGraff did in 2024, and he should continue to do as his UW career continues to move forward. And it's something where I'm so intrigued by this because for a few different reasons. The number one is it seems like he's somebody who Washington was able to, kind of keep under the radar till late in the process where he doesn't have a lot of big time offers. Arizona, UNLV, or some of the names that stood out where he had an official visit set to UNLV for June 20th. Obviously, it doesn't seem like he's going to be taking it at this point in time, but he's somebody who brings so much upside to the table where I don't project this guy to play for, a year or two down the line. And that's okay. Because I look at where Washington just is in terms of the tight end position as a whole. And I think that there's a lot of good things to look at for 2025 and beyond, where this year, a guy that I'm really high on, another guy from the state of Oregon, just like Sam, is four-star Baron Naone. And I originally thought that he was somebody who might play a lot, but after adding Cade Eldridge to the transfer portal, adding Quentin Moore, and then adding Quentin Moore back from injury, I should say, and then having Decker DeGraff in the mix as well, there might not be a lot of snaps to go around for some of these younger guys. And I feel like that's going to be the case next year as well when Sam does get to campus because he's somebody who is a little bit raw at the position, and I think that's okay. He's somebody who you look at that frame at 6'4", 225, 230, somewhere in that ballpark, and you can say, all right, it's okay to have this guy sit and develop for a year or two. And maybe down the line, you have somebody who is a really fun move tight end, a lot like what Tanner McLaughlin was for this Jedd Fisch offense during his time in Arizona. And I think that's a lot of fun because you can just be patient and you can work with this guy for a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years on just really establishing the fundamentals. And that's something where I look at tight ends coach Jordan Paopao, and I think this is a perfect match for these two guys because Sam is somebody who has all the physical tools in the world to wind up being a really high-end tight end because of just what he brings to the table athletically. And that's something where, to bring it back to the Wildcat quarterback thing, I think that's where that comes into play and is really important in my eyes, especially because he's somebody who you can just find different ways to get on the field and get the ball into his hands. And that's something that's really become a staple of this Jedd Fisch offense where, you look at some of the guys that are on this roster right now where Jordan Washington is a perfect just comparison in that light where they're going to find so many different ways to put the ball in his hands. And I just say comparison in terms of utilization in different roles, not in terms of, style or athleticism. They don't play the same position or anything like that. But I think that there are so many things to like about what Sam brings to the table. And it's something where Washington has done a good job of identifying under the radar position players, especially at tight end, especially at this position, because you look at what Jordan Paopao's track record at this position is throughout his career at UW, where you've gotten some of the high end guys and been able to get into the NFL with somebody like Hunter Bryant. But you've also done really well with players that flew under the radar, Will Dissly, Drew Sample, Cade Otton. There is such a long history of tight ends succeeding under Jordan Paopao that he deserves the trust of this fan base when it comes to development and when it comes to identifying talent. And I think this is a really, really great example of how this can play out down the line where, again, if he doesn't make an impact in 2026, 2027, that's okay. And then he's somebody who, let's say 2028 rolls around and he's listed as the number 2 tight end on the depth chart, and people will look at that and say, oh, Sam Vyhlidal, I kind of forgot this guy was on the roster. That's totally fine because Washington has done such a great job with this throughout his very, very long career, where obviously he went and spent some time at Arizona and hasn't been at Washington the entire time. But Jordan Paopao has just done so many good things at that position that he really does deserve that trust there. And Jedd Fisch has found so many ways to get tight ends involved in the offense, where if he's a guy who ends up catching 25, 30, 35 balls, that's going to be a really, really nice season when, you have some of these other guys when, you just look around the roster right now, Rashid Williams, Justice Williams, you go down the roster with some of these true freshmen, Chris Lawson, Raiden Vinesbury. You don't need any tight end to be the focal point of the offense, but having somebody who can be a consistent, security blanket over the middle of the field, who can make plays after the catch, like I believe Sam does a really good job of, that's something where you really like what that might look like for you so far down the line. And that's a lot of what recruiting is. It's projection. And Sam Vyhlidal is an excellent projection take. And when I look at this tight ends class, he might not be the only guy that ends up at Washington. And we'll get to that right after a message from our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKDOWNCollege for half off your first year. This commitment is going to be very, very impactful for the rest of Washington's 2026 class. Now we look at the pass catchers, and we're going to get into those on some later shows, like at the wide receiver position with guys like Mason James, who just moved up his commitment date. But I look at just the tight end position as a whole, where this has been a very just narrow search for Jordan Paopao, not in terms of, scope because they're from every corner of the country, but in terms of how many players he's really been interested in the position. Because you look at it and there really have only been 4 guys that have been just very serious targets, in my opinion, at least, for Jordan Paopao. Now, one of them came off the board on Monday in 3-star tight end Kekua Aumua, who is a product of the IMG Academy down in Florida, and he committed to stay in Florida and go play for the Gators. So that really brings it down to 3 players. And in my opinion, now there's only one outstanding tight end on the board. Let me tell you why. Because we look at somebody like 3-star tight end Landen Miree from Princeton High School in Ohio, and he's somebody who I've been really interested in for a while. Lars and I have talked about him a lot on this show. And it's something where he was at Baylor a few weeks ago, I think Arizona State as well, and had some other visits before he was supposed to come up to Washington on the June 20th weekend. And I have a feeling that visit, while it might still happen, is not going to be what it once was, because I think that Sam Vyhlidal's commitment fills that role. And I think Washington is going to be very comfortable with that, because Landen is a guy who I think he's very, very talented. But I think he's somebody who you needed to find a way to get him on the field right away. And with Sam, you can just kind of feel out the room a little bit more and let it shake out, with some of the guys that are a little bit more ready to play right now. And that's why I talked about his potential and where he could be in a few years in the first segment, because I think that's a really good thing. Where if all of a sudden you have so many guys that are competing for playing time right now, it turns into an issue where, as people like to talk about this modern world of the NIL and transfer portal and all that sort of stuff, where all of a sudden more guys might hit the portal because they're looking for immediate playing time. And I don't think that's something that would end up being a concern for Sam. And if he does force his way onto the field right away, you're happy with that, because you always want to see the cream rise to the top. But with a guy like Landen, it feels like he just is a little bit more refined as a route runner and a few other areas of his game right now. So he might look for a spot that not only will maximize his NIL, but will give him more of an ability to play right away. Where, again, it's why I listed some of the guys that are going to be around when Sam gets on campus in 2026, guys like Decker DeGraff, and how the staff might feel about somebody like Baron Naone, because it feels like they're just going to be so much higher in the pecking order that when you add just too many other guys that are ready to play right away to that mix right now, it can create some just depth issues in terms of guys transferring out, or maybe, somebody's unhappy if they're not playing as much as they should. And Landen, to his credit, should go find somewhere where that's going to be the best fit for him. And for a while, that looked like it might have been Washington, but with the way the position is shaped out, especially with Quentin Moore being able to return for another season following his knee injury that put him out for the entirety of 2024 outside of a couple of plays, I think that might be just kind of the route the staff is going down. Now, that leads into another guy who I am very, very intrigued with, and I think is and has been the number one target on the board for Washington at this position for a while, and that's three-star Kai Wesley from Orem High School in Utah. This is a guy who was on his official visit with Sam over this past weekend, and he's another one who I don't think is necessarily on the verge of, cracking the depth chart at the college level or anything, but I think, in my opinion, he might be a top 5 guy in the country in terms of where his ceiling is, because at 6'7", 230, 235, he just has all the physical traits that you look for at the position, and is somebody who I think is also, I don't want to say a significant way off from seeing the field, but he might need a year or 2 years to see the field before anything, can really be decided there in terms of where he might be, because he is a little raw in terms of his pass catching ability, where he's such a different kind of physical player because of his height, because of his just frame, that he's going to succeed at a very high level in high school, because there aren't a lot of kids who can match up with a 6'7" pass catcher. Let's be honest about that. But I look at him as, an inline blocker sort of guy, where a lot like running back, where we've seen Scotty Graham take a thunder and lightning, if you will, sort of back, where there's always one guy that runs really well between the tackles and one elite speed guy that can get outside and, get to the edge, all that sort of stuff. I feel like we've seen the same thing at tight end with Jordan Paopao since he got here, where you're taking a guy who is a little bit more of a move tight end, a really good athlete who you like his potential as a blocker, but you like him more as a pass catcher, and then vice versa. And with Kai, I think he might end up being the perfect mix of both, because we saw what the development track was for Kaleki Latu. We know where that goes. With Kaleki Latu during his one season with Washington, and how I saw him improve week in and week out on both aspects, because he is just such a physical outlier in terms of where he is because of his frame. And I feel very, very similarly about Kai. Now, for all the everydayers here on YouTube, I feel like I might have missed the point a little of the question of, will Washington take 2 tight ends in 2026? And I believe the answer is yes. Now that you have that move tight end in the boat, and a guy like and a guy like Sam Vyhlidal, who I really think has so much upside and so much to offer, and is a really nice take for this coaching staff. Now you can really just put a full court press on Kai Wesley and show him what his development track would look like alongside a guy like Sam. Because we know from, for all the everydayers on this program, when our good buddy Jake Butt likes to come on, he's talked so much about the tiger personnel, as Jedd Fisch calls it, the 2 tight end sets that he likes to run in just with this offense, and having guys like Kai and Sam who can just be so versatile and play so well off of one another. It feels like that's going to end up being the plan for just really, until we hear otherwise, every single recruiting class, because you might as well stack the position, and then you don't run into depth issues like you had last year, where there were so many guys that were hurt and you ran into it was a really unfortunate situation, but you don't have that problem when you have 6, maybe even 7 guys at the position with the new scholarship limit, where it seems like, unlike what Jedd Fisch said earlier on in the process, that they might be a little bit more willing to go over that 85-man roster limit, where it's now at 105 in terms of scholarships, but it's still, with revenue sharing and everything. The closer to 85 you are, the better. But having 2 high upside guys like this in Kai Wesley and Sam Vyhlidal seems like a really, really great place for this class to be, and just a really great spot for this coaching staff to build on as you continue to see this offense develop during its time on Montlake. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for being here. To all you everydayers out there, I really do appreciate when you tune into these bonus shows. We're going to have so much more of these coming for you throughout the offseason, so please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day, so please make sure you click that like button, click that little bell, so you never miss when we post a new video just like this one. Make sure you leave a like on this video as well. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section for your audio only. Please, if it's 5-star reviews, it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.